At the will reading, my parents burst out laughing as the lawyer slid a document across the polished mahogany table. My sister, Lauren, was granted $7.9 million. Me? They handed me a crumpled 10 and said, "Go earn your own." The room seemed to tilt. My mother leaned back with her perfect smile, her voice cutting like glass. Some kids just don't measure up. My name is Jessica Miller, and at 29, I thought I had grown used to their cruelty, years of being the afterthought, the disappointment, the one who never fit the mold. But in that moment, shame burned through me like wildfire. Then the lawyer cleared his throat. He reached for a sealed envelope, my grandfather's handwriting scrawled across the front. This, he said, was his final letter. The air shifted. My mother's smile froze seconds later. Her scream shattered the room. I wish I could say that moment in the lawyer's office was the first time my parents had humiliated me, but it wasn't. It was simply the grand finale of a lifetime of smaller cuts, each one reminding me I would never be their golden child. Growing up in the Miller household, appearances were everything. My father, Charles, was a corporate attorney who measured success by the weight of a paycheck and the cut of a tailored suit. My mother, Evelyn, carried herself like the world owed her admiration. Together, they cultivated an image of the perfect suburban family, impressive house, luxury vacations, carefully staged family portraits hung in glossy frames. But within those walls, there was a hierarchy, and at the top of it was my sister, Lauren. 3 years older, she was everything my parents valued. Polished, ambitious, and effortlessly charming. She was the cheerleader, the honor roll student, the one who could glide into any room and collect admiration like loose change. At family gatherings, conversations revolved around her internships, her perfect GPA, her bright future. My parents clapped the loudest, their pride swelling with every achievement, and then there was me. I was the quiet one who preferred sketching in notebooks and volunteering at the local wildlife rehab center instead of playing tennis at the country club. While Lauren mastered economics, I buried myself in environmental science textbooks. I loved the earth, the forests, the oceans, things that couldn't be quantified in dollar signs. But in my parents' eyes, passion without profit was just a hobby, a distraction. "Environmental science?" my mother once scoffed, flipping through a glossy magazine as if I were invisible. "That won't pay for the lifestyle you're accustomed to." Her words stung more than she ever knew. Because I wasn't accustomed to luxury. I never asked for designer shoes or expensive trips. What I wanted was their respect, something money could never buy. The only person who seemed to understand me was my grandfather, Thomas. A retired banker with sharp eyes and a mischievous grin, he had a way of seeing through all the masks people wore. Unlike my parents, he didn't care about appearances. He cared about integrity, about purpose. He wore the same worn leather watch for decades, and drove a modest pickup truck despite having the means to live lavishly. "Jess," he'd tell me on long summer evenings by the lake, "the true value of something isn't in its price tag. It's in the purpose it serves." He was the only one who ever called me by that nickname. With him, I felt seen. With him, I wasn't the family's disappointment. I was enough. So when that envelope with his handwriting appeared in the lawyer's hands, something in me stirred. Maybe, just maybe, Grandpa hadn't abandoned me after all. Maybe the man who had always believed in me had left one final truth for me to uncover. It was 2 years before the will reading when everything began to shift. Grandpa Thomas had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and suddenly, the man who had always seemed invincible looked fragile. His broad shoulders slumped, his steps slowed, but his eyes, those sharp, knowing eyes, never lost their spark. That was when my parents and Lauren began appearing at his doorstep more often. They brought expensive wine, catered meals, glossy brochures about retirement villas he might enjoy. My mother even suggested handling his finances to reduce his stress. To anyone watching from the outside, it looked like a family rallying around a beloved patriarch. But I knew better. Their concern was proportional to the size of his bank account. Meanwhile, I visited the way I always had. I showed up in jeans and a t-shirt, carrying homemade soup or his favorite cinnamon bread from the local bakery. We didn't talk about trusts or estates. We talked about books, about the old Western movies he loved, about the climate research project I had just finished. He asked real questions, and he listened to the answers. He never once made me feel as if I had chosen the wrong path. One afternoon, about 3 months before he passed, I remember him looking unusually alert despite the medication. He took my hand with surprising strength and said, "Jess, remember timing is everything. In investments, in life." I laughed nervously. "That sounds like one of your chess lessons again." "Exactly," he said, his lips curving into a tired smile. "The first move isn't the most important. It's the setup that matters. And patience. Patience is its own reward." There was something in his tone that unsettled me, as if he was trying to prepare me for more than just a board game. Before I could press him, he changed the subject, asking about the watershed cleanup I had volunteered for that weekend. Those words echoed in my mind long after I left his house. Timing, setup, patience, they felt less like casual advice and more like clues. But to what? I didn't know. As his health declined further, the visits from my parents and Lauren only increased. They brought designer blankets, the best organic teas, even a personal nurse with a glossy resume. But I noticed the way they eyed his study, the safe in the corner, the drawers in his desk. Their care was a performance, their smiles rehearsed. In contrast, my visits were quieter, simpler. I sat by his side and read aloud from mystery novels when his eyes were too tired to focus. Sometimes he drifted off to sleep, his hands still clutching mine, and I'd just sit there, listening to the clock tick in the silence. Those moments mattered more to me than any inheritance ever could. I didn't realize it then, but Grandpa had already begun setting the stage for his final lesson, the one that would turn my entire family upside down. The funeral was exactly what my mother wanted: elegant, restrained, and impressive to the right people. The church overflowed with floral arrangements flown in from out of state, and the reception afterward looked more like a corporate gala than a memorial. Waiters in crisp uniforms passed trays of imported cheeses, and a string quartet played softly in the background. To the guests, it was tasteful perfection. To me, it felt hollow. I stood near the photo display. I had helped arrange snapshots of Grandpa fishing at the lake, holding me as a toddler, laughing with his old college friends. Each picture felt like a piece of the man I knew. Yet most people barely glanced at them. They were too busy networking, shaking hands, exchanging business cards. My father, Charles, cornered two of Grandpa's former colleagues to discuss investment strategies, as if death was just another fiscal quarter to plan around. My mother, Evelyn, moved through the room like a hostess at a charity gala, introducing herself to prominent guests with her signature poised smile. Even in grief, she was collecting social capital. And Lauren, well, she played her part flawlessly. Dressed in a designer black dress, makeup waterproof yet picture-perfect, she shed 2 perfectly timed tears during the eulogy. People whispered about her grace, about how admirable it was for her to hold the family together. I wanted to scream. I, on the other hand, stood in silence. No one congratulated me. No one praised my performance. I wasn't performing. I was mourning. And in that room full of polished black suits and practiced sympathy, I felt like the only one who truly missed him. After the service, I slipped outside to the small garden behind the church. Away from the cameras and whispers, I let myself breathe. The cold air stung, but it was real. I closed my eyes and remembered Grandpa's voice, the way he'd call me Jess with warmth no one else used. He would have hated the spectacle inside. He believed in simple truths, not staged performances. When I finally returned, my mother was already orchestrating the next step. She had arranged for everyone to meet with the family attorney, Mr. Harold Peterson, within the week. The way she spoke about it, you would think it was just another event on her social calendar, an appointment as routine as a luncheon. Lauren canceled client meetings to clear her schedule. My father spent the evening reading up on estate taxes. For them, the will reading was the main event. For me, it was just another reminder that Grandpa was gone. Still, a part of me hoped. Maybe he had left behind a note, a keepsake, something small to remind me that he saw me to the very end. I didn't care about the money. I never had. What I wanted was a final connection, a sign that I had mattered to him as much as he had mattered to me. I had no idea that the letter waiting for me would do so much more than that. The following Friday, we gathered in the sleek downtown office of Peterson, Blackwell. The top-floor conference room overlooked the Boston skyline, glass walls gleaming with late afternoon light. Everything about the space screamed wealth and permanence, a fitting stage for my family to measure worth in numbers. My mother arrived first, as punctual as ever, dressed in a navy Chanel suit that probably cost more than my rent for the year. Her ash-blonde bob was sprayed into immovable perfection. She glanced at me in my simple black dress and whispered, "You could have made more of an effort, Jessica. This is an important day." My father strode in next, checking his Rolex as if he were timing the proceedings. His handshake with Mr. Peterson was brisk, transactional. Then Lauren entered, heels clicking confidently across the hardwood, her designer handbag tucked neatly under her arm. She air-kissed me, the scent of her perfume lingering like an afterthought. I sat apart from them, the outsider as always, my palms damp with sweat. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming. Your father and grandfather, Mr. Thomas Miller, was very specific about how today should unfold. The legal jargon took nearly half an hour: charitable bequests, donations to staff, a life estate for his housekeeper." My mother's foot tapped with impatience. My father checked his watch. Lauren smiled with quiet anticipation. I just waited, hoping for something, anything that might connect me to him. Finally, Peterson adjusted his glasses. "Now to the principal estate." He looked directly at my parents. "To Evelyn and Charles Miller, Thomas leaves his primary residence in Beacon Hill, as well as his vacation home in Palm Beach." My mother's eyes gleamed, her smile the most genuine I'd seen all week. "To Lauren Miller," Peterson continued, "he leaves the sum of $7.9 million, to be held in trust according to the terms outlined." Lauren gasped softly, pressing a manicured hand to her chest. My father nodded in approval. My mother squeezed Lauren's hand, tears of triumph glittering in her eyes. Then Peterson looked at me. "To Jessica Miller." His voice softened slightly. "He leaves the sum of $10. The room went silent. Heat rushed to my face, my vision blurring. $10. Less than the cost of the cab ride here. My mother broke the silence with a sharp laugh. "Well, that's clarifying, isn't it?" She leaned back in her chair, her smirk dripping venom. "Some kids just don't measure up." I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. Lauren shifted uncomfortably, though the gleam in her eye never quite disappeared. My father simply shook his head, dismissing me the way he always had. I wanted to run, to escape the pity in Mr. Peterson's gaze, the triumph in my parents' faces. But pride anchored me to the chair. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Peterson cleared his throat again. "Additionally," he said carefully, "Jessica is to receive this." From a leather briefcase, he withdrew a thick, sealed envelope. My name, Jessica Miller, was written in bold, familiar handwriting. My grandfather's handwriting. He placed it gently on the table in front of me. My hands trembled as I reached for it, tracing the ink with my fingertips. The air in the room shifted. My mother's smile faltered. My father's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Lauren leaned forward, curiosity plain on her face. "This envelope," Peterson continued, "is to be opened only after the conclusion of today's proceedings. Per Mr. Miller's instructions, its contents pertain directly to Jessica and must be respected as such." A pulse of electricity shot through me. $10, and this envelope. Was this his real gift? For the first time that day, I lifted my chin and met my family's eyes. They might have seen me as worthless, but Grandpa never had. Whatever was inside this envelope, I knew one thing for certain: this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Mr. Peterson dimmed the lights. A quiet hum filled the conference room as a screen descended from the ceiling. After a flicker of static, my grandfather's face appeared. I sucked in a breath. He looked thinner, the illness having carved away at his frame, but his eyes, those sharp, twinkling eyes, were just as I remembered. "If you're watching this," he began, his voice steadier than it had been in his final days, "then I've moved on, and you're all sitting there, wondering what this old man has up his sleeve." A small smile curved his lips. I recognized that smile, the one he wore when he was about to win at chess. He turned first to Harold, his best friend of 50 years. Harold, thank you for your honesty. You never sugarcoated the truth, even when it wasn't what I wanted to hear. The cars are yours, because you valued their craftsmanship, not their price tags. Harold dabbed his eyes in the corner of the room. Then Grandpa's gaze shifted. Marta, my housekeeper and friend, your kindness made my home a true home. The guest house is yours, as it has always been more yours than mine. Marta's lips trembled, whispering a prayer in Spanish. But then his tone shifted as he addressed my parents. Evelyn, my only daughter, you've always been ambitious. I remember you as a girl demanding the biggest dollhouse, the prettiest dresses. Charles, you've worked tirelessly to secure a lifestyle. I respect dedication, but dedication without integrity is dangerous. My mother's smile wavered. My father's jaw tightened. To Lauren, Grandpa continued. Congratulations on your inheritance. You understand appearances. I've structured your trust with quarterly distributions to ensure you learn moderation. Use it wisely. Lauren blinked, her perfect mask faltering. The words sounded like praise, but underneath, they cut. Finally, he looked straight into the camera. Straight at me. Jessica, my Jess. You see what others miss you always have. From the time you noticed the bird's nest in the oak tree no one else saw, to the way you cared for people without expecting anything in return. Remember what I told you. Timing matters. Patience matters. True wealth is never measured in dollars. My throat tightened. Even from beyond, he saw me. Then Grandpa leaned forward, his eyes sharp. My will may seem unfair, perhaps even cruel, but there is more to the story. I have arranged a series of tasks to be completed. These are not games, but lessons. Lessons in character. My father scoffed under his breath. My mother silenced him with a sharp elbow. Mr. Peterson has instructions to provide sealed letters at specific times. Each must be followed exactly. Any attempt to contest this will, or interfere, will result in everything, every dollar, every property, every investment being transferred immediately to the Thomas Miller Foundation for Environmental Conservation. The silence was deafening. My mother's sharp intake of breath broke it. That's absurd, she whispered, color draining from her face. Grandpa's voice, unyielding, continued. Jessica, the envelope you've received contains the key to my lake house. Inside, you'll find the first step. You must go alone. Remember, appearances deceive. Sometimes, $10 can be worth more than millions. The screen faded to black. No one spoke. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. As stated, all beneficiaries must honor Mr. Miller's conditions. Any violation triggers the charitable remainder clause. My father muttered a curse under his breath. My mother's hand trembled as she clutched her purse. Lauren glanced at me, a flicker of unease in her eyes. I sat frozen, the envelope heavy in my lap. $10 and a key. My family had laughed. My mother had mocked. But now, fear danced in her eyes. And for the first time, I wasn't the one shrinking in shame. I was the one holding power. Power I hadn't asked for, but power all the same. The drive to the lake house was 2 hours, but every mile felt like stepping deeper into memory. I kept glancing at the sealed envelope on the passenger seat, my grandfather's handwriting scrawled across the front. My fingers itched to tear it open, but his voice echoed in my mind, patience. Jess, timing is everything. The city skyline faded into winding country roads, the air crisp with pine. I remembered summers spent here as a child, when Grandpa taught me constellations under skies free of city lights, when mornings began with fishing rods and ended with stories by the fire. Those memories steadied me, a reminder that this place was more than property. It was the heart of who he was. By the time I reached the gravel driveway, the sun was dipping low, painting the lake in streaks of gold. The cabin stood just as I remembered. Weathered wood, a wide porch, fishing rods leaning against the wall. It looked untouched, as if Grandpa had only stepped out for groceries and would be back any minute. I parked, clutching the envelope, and took a deep breath before stepping out. But the sound of engines behind me shattered the stillness. I turned just in time to see my parents' black Mercedes and Lauren's silver BMW pulling in. Surprise, Lauren called too brightly as she got out, her heels sinking slightly into the gravel. "We thought you could use some support." My stomach sank. The letter said I was supposed to come alone. My father adjusted his tie, as if arriving at a board meeting. "Peterson confirmed we could join afterward. You'll open the door first, Jessica. Then we'll assist." "Assist?" I repeated flatly. "Or supervise?" My mother's lips curved into a tight smile. "Don't be dramatic. This is a family matter. We all have a stake." Their words stung, not because they were true, but because they revealed everything. They weren't here for me. They were here for whatever wealth or secrets Grandpa had hidden. I didn't argue further. Instead, I walked to the front door, slipping the key into the lock. It clicked open with a sound that made my chest tighten. When the door swung wide, the scent hit me first. Pine, old books, and a faint trace of Grandpa's aftershave. It was like stepping into a time capsule. The living room was frozen in place, his reading glasses on the side table, a half-finished mystery novel still marked, the fishing gear leaning in the corner. For a moment, I just stood there, overwhelmed. Then the click of designer heels broke the spell. My family filed in behind me, their voices jarring in the quiet. "It's stuffy in here," my mother muttered, throwing open a window. "This property is prime real estate," my father said, already calculating. Lauren ran her fingers along the mantel, picking up a framed photo of me and Grandpa. "I forgot how many pictures of you he kept here," she said softly, though her tone was hard to read. I ignored them all and headed toward the hallway. Grandpa's study waited at the end, the one room always locked when we visited as kids. His words echoed again in my head. "The setup matters, Jess. Patience is its own reward." Whatever he wanted me to find, I knew it was in there. The study door loomed at the end of the hallway, the same one that had always been locked when I was a child. Grandpa used to tell me, everyone needs a space that belongs only to them. Now, with the fish-shaped key from the envelope, that space belonged to me. The key slid into the lock, turning with a click that echoed through the hall. I pushed the door open, and the scent of pine and old leather greeted me. For a moment, it felt like he had just stepped out, leaving everything waiting for my return. The room was smaller than I remembered, walls lined with bookshelves, a large oak desk positioned toward the window overlooking the lake. Maps were pinned to a corkboard. Filing cabinets stood like silent guards, and in the corner sat his worn leather chair. Behind me, my father muttered, "Start checking the files. There must be deeds, account records, something of value." "Richard," my mother snapped, though her eyes were already scanning the shelves. "Show some respect." Respect. The word felt foreign on her tongue. I ignored them both and approached the desk. On its surface sat a single sheet of paper, numbers scrawled in Grandpa's distinctive slant, dates paired with dollar amounts, followed by a single question: where did it all begin? My pulse quickened. It wasn't a ledger, it was a puzzle. As I studied it, my eyes drifted to the small decorative chess piece on the desk, a knight that had always sat there. I picked it up, rolling it in my hands, when something shifted. The base twisted loose. Inside was a tiny compartment containing a small brass key and a folded note. My breath caught as I opened it. Second letter in floor safe. Combination date of betrayal. "Jess, what is it?" Lauren asked, hovering too close, her curiosity sharp. "Nothing you need to worry about," I replied, sliding the note into my pocket before she could read it. I dropped to my knees, scanning the floor until I noticed a faint seam hidden beneath a rug in the corner. Pulling it back revealed a safe embedded in the wood. My heart thudded as I entered the numbers that had burned into my memory. June 17, 1995, the date on an old newspaper clipping I had seen earlier. The dial clicked. The safe opened. Inside was another sealed envelope, thicker than the first, and a small leather notebook bound with a rubber band. Before anyone else could snatch them, I grabbed both and held them to my chest. My father stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Open it, now." I shook my head. Grandpa's instructions were clear. I read it first. "Don't be ridiculous," my mother hissed. "This affects all of us." "No," I said firmly, surprising even myself. "This affects me. He wrote my name. He trusted me." For a moment, no one spoke. My parents' eyes burned with fury, Lauren's with something more complicated: fear, maybe even doubt. But for the first time in years, I felt steady. The truth was here, in my hands, and I wasn't about to let them take it from me. I didn't sleep that night. In the small inn by the lake, I spread the contents of the thick envelope across the bed: financial ledgers, old clippings, and one final letter written in my grandfather's slanted hand. His words cut through me with the same clarity they always had. Jess, by now you know the truth. Wealth is not measured by millions, but by what we choose to do with them. I've seen the cracks in this family: ambition without integrity, appearances without substance. The last choice is yours. Forgiveness is optional. Wisdom is mandatory. By morning, I knew what I had to do. When we reconvened at the lake house that afternoon, Mr. Peterson arrived with a notary and 2 witnesses. My parents sat stiffly on the sofa, still dressed like they were attending a board meeting, while Lauren lingered at the edge of the room, her eyes uncertain. Peterson addressed us all. As executor, I must confirm the final clause of Thomas Miller's estate. Jessica is the sole trustee of the foundation. She may pursue legal action regarding the fraud she uncovered, or she may implement the inheritance plan as structured, focusing on ethical oversight and community benefit. My father bristled. Fraud? That's outrageous. Peterson's gaze was cool. The documents speak for themselves, Charles. So do the recordings. Silence followed. All eyes turned to me. For the first time in my life, I didn't shrink from their scrutiny. I took a breath. I won't drag this family through courts or headlines. Grandpa wasn't trying to punish, he was trying to teach. I choose to honor his vision. The foundation will move forward under my care, with strict conditions: transparency, service, and honesty. My mother's face flushed crimson. You mean, you get everything? I shook my head. Not everything, just the responsibility. You still have the houses, Lauren still has her trust, but I have the legacy, and I intend to use it for good. Lauren's voice broke the silence. I accept that. All of it. I'm tired of pretending, Mom. This feels right. The room shifted. For once, my parents had no words. Mr. Peterson signed the final documents, his expression unreadable. Then it settled. Jessica Miller is the primary trustee of the Thomas Miller Foundation. When the witnesses left, I walked out onto the porch. The lake shimmered under the late afternoon sun, just as it had in my childhood. I clutched Grandpa's letter, the ink smudged slightly from my tears. Behind me, my family unraveled. Ahead of me, a new chapter waited, one built not on appearances, but on purpose. For the first time, I felt free.